Yeah, it says it is live. We have 0 viewers, so actually there's no way to verify that. But hey.
Hopefully we'll get some more. Although my clock says 9:59. Should I wait till 10?
Oh, we will before we like, until is it 10 your time?
Now it is. Bam chicka bam. Are you hitting record?
Oh, I think it's meant to like record by itself.
Cool.
I think.
As you can see, this is our very first time and we are excited. Researchers are running studies that can help you sell your products better, but you don't have time to read hundreds of scientific peer-reviewed papers. That's why we created Selling with Science, the weekly 20-minute science top-up that will put you ahead. I'm Nikki Elbaz.
Hey,
and this is...
Yeah, well, you can introduce me. I'll be quiet.
No, go ahead.
All right, go. Hi, I'm Sophia Dagnan, and today we're actually talking about something that's very topical, and that's New Year resolutions. And we're actually going to talk about why some New Year's resolutions succeed and why some fail, and how that knowledge can help you improve customer retention. So that should be pretty cool.
It's good stuff. Always game for some customer retention, right?
Okay, so should we do like our error admitting now, I think?
All right, let's admit our mistakes.
Yeah, so we wrote our promotional materials for this before either of us actually really dove into the research paper. And so we based the numbers we shared with you guys on what other publications had said, because they were trusted publications with us. But once we actually read the paper, we found out that the 8% figure wasn't actually 8%. In fact, 19% of people studied complete New Year's resolutions successfully, but only 9% complete them without like any errors and setbacks. So just putting that out there, because we believe in being transparent with you guys.
And I think that's something that's really important, is when you are studying data, and this is why this is such a cool forum, because data is sometimes really hard to get through, and you're like reading data points from different studies, and you're driven to studies from some sort of article that you think is really trustworthy, and you see someone say a quote or a number or whatever, and you're like, hey, cool, okay, yeah, that sounds good. But you really kind of have to dive into it a little deeper. I actually just read a study today that surprised me, that auditory and visual and kinesthetic learning styles are a total myth. And I was like, wait, what? And I'm sure there are people that will disagree with him. And I feel like there's so many layers upon layers of things. And you really have to make sure you're reading things right and reading a broad amount of things that give you that full picture. So sorry that we made that error.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I know like when I first started writing, that was a mistake I made a lot. Like I would see a stat and then I would just link to the article that had that stat. And now that behavior just like makes me cringe, because when you actually start following them down, like the rabbit hole of stats, you find that so many of these papers are linking papers that are linking papers. And the original like source is lost. And then that data gets misquoted. And it's just not good. It doesn't help anyone.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, it's good stuff. So actually, I think 9% without any setbacks is kind of amazing. Like no setbacks. That's really hard. So that's pretty impressive, actually.
Okay, so I was thinking we can start with just summarizing the study and kind of updating everybody on what this is. So this was a study run on New Year's resolutions. And so they got 200 people together and they studied them over a 2-year period. So that gave you that nice kind of longer time frame, because with 1 year, well, it doesn't really give you enough information, because they may do really great 1 year, but then the second year they're like, oh, you know what? I lost 30 pounds this year, so now I will eat Oda cake and it will be awesome. So the research was good. And so here's what they found. 77% of people lasted for 1 week and then gave up on their resolutions. 55% lasted for a whole month, which was pretty cool. 40% got up to 6 months, and then only 19% lasted for 2 years. And out of those 19%, only 9% did so without struggling or dropping the ball. And yeah, That's pretty impressive for the 9%.
But it's crazy that the 77% only lasted for a week. And I find it fascinating that every year we do make New Year resolutions, even knowing that we fail. I find that really, really interesting.
Do you know what? Like, this is something I just read about 2 weeks ago. It's something called the emotional cycle of change, which apparently everybody goes through whenever we make a change. And so that first week, it coincides with like the first step of that cycle, which is uninformed optimism. So you're just really excited about that thing you're going to do. And you have that energy and you believe that anything is possible. So, you know, you last the first week and it's great, but then you hit week 2. And that phase is known as informed pessimism. So at that point, you realize that, man, this thing is really hard. And I'm not sure how I'm going to get to the end. Like, how am I going to succeed in this? This is difficult. And then it gets worse. So you hit the valley of despair. And that's when success seems so far away that you can't possibly reach it. And the thing you used to do in the past, that behavior, seems okay. You're like, you know what? Things weren't that bad before. Like, it's safer that way. I might as well leave this like horrible pit of like sadness and go back to the way things were. And that's where we see that huge drop off where like the 40% remain at the 6-month mark, like everybody else just gone. And only if you continue do you get to that success.
And I think that's really cool, knowing that this is something people go through. It's kind of like the stages of grief. Like, if you know that it's normal to be angry, to go through those stages, then it's that the validation is huge, and you also know that it's temporary, so you just push past this, and no, it's not better to go back to the way things were, even though this valley of doom despair feels terrible. It's like, okay, we'll sit here for a week and then we'll climb out. I think that's really cool. And I think it definitely has a lot of ramifications in terms of marketing, of helping people through that. I'm thinking right now of a client that I have she's selling a course. And I was reading the surveys of the people who had taken the course and just going through it and seeing it's a fantastic course and seeing how many people did not complete the course and at what stage they dropped off and why they dropped off. And if you know that after a week, people will feel this kind of despair, and you know that after the 2 weeks, then you can kind of provide more coaching and more guidance to help people through that phase. So I think it's really cool, this piece of data.
That is actually really interesting because it brings me to something else that the study mentioned I want to talk about. It's so they were looking at what habits made you successful. And so the unsuccessful habits, people who failed or people who blamed themselves for things that were going wrong a lot and who deployed wishful thinking. So basically, this is behavior I have done so many times, when you just start punishing yourself and you're like, dude, like, why are you so useless at this? Like, you should have succeeded by now. And that is really bad for achieving your goals. Apparently, science says so. And so do I, because I've tried it and it does not work at all. So
that's where all the like positive motivation comes in, which it's so easy to bash it and be like, oh, you're too like, positive and sweet and like, come on, get a reality check. But we really are more motivated by positivity. Like we like feeling good about ourselves. So yeah, that's cool. That's another aspect and element that we could be using as marketers to make people feel good. And, this is something actually that I struggle with a lot because there's a copywriting formula called PAS, which is pain, agitation, solution. And you basically are, bringing the person into the moment of their pain, and then you're making them feel even worse about it. And then you're saying, hey, I have this beautiful solution for you. And you're bringing them through this journey, and then they just want to buy what you have to sell. And I love this formula because it's really effective and it's also really fun. But I definitely struggle with writing the pain in a positive way, so the person feels good about themselves and feels hope versus just like, yeah, this is awful, like this is bad. So that's also something interesting in terms of staying positive and encouraging people in a positive way, even as you're acknowledging, because I think there is this interesting gap of, well, you did fail. So now how should we approach that? Like, you can't just be positive. You have to also, acknowledge where the mistakes are and work through that. So, yeah.
Yeah. But I think you can be positive about the way you acknowledge the mistakes. Because like when you make a mistake, you in your mind know that like something went wrong. So at that point, somebody, let's say it's like on an organizational scale, so you make a business mistake. Somebody coming up to you and just ripping into you for how badly you did, that is just going to make you feel absolutely defensive. It's going to make you hate that person. And it's not going to help your productivity at all, because you get into that emotional cycle of crap, I made a mistake, I made a mistake. What do I need to do to fix this? But if you approach it from a learning perspective, like, look, mistake, let's not do that again, and here's what we can do to not do that again, that's a lot more helpful.
It reminds me a lot of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, how, one of the methods they talk about is to talk to yourself as if you are talking to a friend, instead of bashing yourself, because we bash ourselves, talk to yourself as if you would talk to someone else, so you would not go, most of us would not go up to someone and start talking to, you're saying what you were saying, saying like, you're horrible, why would you do that, that's terrible. You'd be like, listen, people make mistakes, this has got to shape up, but like, yeah, this is the way life is. And you have a lot more empathy for other people than you have for yourself. So yeah, that's a cool way to help us progress in a positive way.
But yeah, because they really found that it's basically the people that succeeded were people who really committed to the goal, but it's people who rewarded themselves for taking steps. And also, interestingly, it was people that took smaller steps. So they found that people who took huge leaps tended to fail more. So it almost needed to be like a manageable journey to your goal versus like a cold turkey approach where you cut everything off. That works for some people, but just the majority of us statistically respond better to a slower, more steady approach.
And this is something I've heard a lot, is making your goals really achievable, because again, that's that positive motivation. You achieve that small piece and then you feel good about it. So then you could take another step and another step and another step. There's some trite quote, something about baby steps and like, taking small steps and then you like take giant leaps or something like that. You look back and they're giant leaps. So it's hard, because you like, there is this spirit in the air, like all the LinkedIn posts I've been reading now, and like everything is all about like my 2018 breakdown and my 2019 goals, and like, this is my year of this and that. And like, it is really hard to just say like, I'm going to do something manageable, because we like to challenge ourselves. We want to achieve a ton. So it's like, yeah, let me take on the world. And it's like, no, you need to do something small. That's hard. It's hard to do that.
But I think it's just is that that separation between the two, because you do achieve the big things by doing a lot of small things. Like, you don't suddenly wake up like tonight, say I decide I want to learn the piano. Like, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow morning and be great to playing the piano and be invited to like Carnegie Hall. I would love that, but sadly it won't happen. It's about breaking those steps down into tiny manageable things until I get good.
Mm-hmm.
But another interesting thing I want to speak to you about was that they actually found that social support only helped after the 6-month mark. So accountability and friends and community, we know how important those are for reaching our goals. But the first part, like the hardest part, where you need to start believing that this is a goal you want, that's something only you can do, according to the study. And so social support up before the 6-month part didn't really make any difference to your success or failure chances. But afterwards, it had a huge impact. So what do you think?
I think that's really interesting. And I'm wondering if that, comes from, it sounds like it's coming from a place of like, you have to come at it yourself and see a little bit of success from yourself. But I'm also wondering if there is a hesitation to share with other people, or for other people to believe that you're doing it before that 6 month. So I feel like there's a lot of things interplaying over here.
That's really interesting.
I also think that this is an opportunity as well in terms of, I would wonder how this would play out, because I know that, a lot of programs will offer social support. So what do you do in the first 6 months to make people feel accountable to themselves and then offer the support of things?
I was actually thinking about that from like a SaaS onboarding perspective. And I was thinking a cool thing to test would just be to make those like initial emails and initial support really about what the person gets out of it. So very much tie it into making that person feel better about achieving their goals, like really build them up to give them that strength to buy into that goal. And then at the 6 month mark, you can really test supporting your Facebook groups or Slack groups or however you provide community support. Because at the 6 month mark, when you have that commitment, a lot of people feel readier to share. Because say like you're learning a new tool and you're in a community that you can help other people learn that too as well. The first 6 months you're still learning, so there may be some apprehension about sharing skills just in case you get it wrong. Because I know for me, like I find it really hard to share things if I think there's like a chance I get it wrong. Like, you know what? No, better not say anything. Sound like an idiot. What am I doing?
Yeah, definitely. I wonder, like that would be so awesome to test, because I feel like most companies would say, you can't wait till 6 months. That's like way too long in our customer journey to not be promoting all these things.
I
but then push the promotion. Got it. But, so they could lurk around for a few months, get comfortable, see what people are asking, see other people making mistakes.
Yeah, because I mean, what do you lose? As a lot of companies, in my experience, like with emails I get, you promote so many stuff at the beginning. I mean, like you personally, have you actually ever gone through all those things that they send you that you should click on, like in the first few emails? Because I haven't. It's like, I have a million other things to do. And like, this looks interesting, but you're giving me like a giant cake and you want me to eat it in one like giant slice. Like, I don't have the time for that.
It's cake. Why don't you have time for it?
Okay, maybe like marzipan cake. Like a really rich cake. You can't eat the entire thing in one sitting. And it's like the size of like Pisa, the town, city.
It's like that Matilda.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely breaking it down into the steps where they're like feeling ready for it and excited about what you have to offer, versus just like, let's throw everything awesome that we have on you.
Because I think that's a bit of FOMO there. I think you're scared that you're going to lose them. I think this is why we struggle paring down copy so much. Because like you want to show them everything else, everything that like your product can do. Because you're scared that they'll go to a competitor and they'll think, oh, you know what? They can do like all these other things. Like you can't. So, but that hardly ever happens.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. All right, we are almost at our end mark. So
what would you say the number one? Yeah, go.
Number one, yeah, I think the 6 month thing is huge. I think that totally has a lot of avenues to develop and figure out. And there was one more takeaway that we had. What was it? I'm blinking. Do you remember?
Is that the one that you should test building up your customer at the beginning? Did we have another one?
Oh, yes. Well, just when you know that your customers are going through this journey of making changes to meet them where they are in terms of how they're feeling in that emotional change journey, and also how they the excitement they feel, the despair they feel, that kind of thing. Meet them where they are and help to encourage them. So.
Yeah, just really try to support them and consider testing not sending them all your like supporting resources at the very beginning. Try this is obviously every study should be taken with a lot of grains of salt. So you need to test everything we share with you guys. Like those are just studies, that they're not proven results for anyone. But consider testing really building your customer up in those first few months, and then introducing your social aspect, so your community support, your Slack groups, your Facebook groups, at that 6-month mark, and see if that just engages them better.
Yeah. Yeah, so January is all about customer motivation. So we will see you next week. And yeah, we'll shoot out what the topic is and all that kind of good stuff if you are following us.
Okay, thanks for joining us today. It was
Yeah,
really nice
thanks
talking
so
to you.
much.
Bye.